Imagine, if you will, a pair of identical twins separated at birth. One grows up in a bustling city, the other in a tranquil countryside. Would they still develop the same personality traits, or would their environments shape them differently? Today, we dive into these thought-provoking questions, exploring the intricate dance between genetics and environment, the timeless debate of nature versus nurture, and the fascinating world of gene-environment interaction and epigenetics. In essence, do our genes dictate who we become, or does our environment play a larger role? This is the crux of the nature versus nurture debate. To understand this debate, we first need to understand the concepts of genetic and environmental influences. Let's start with genetics. Picture your DNA as a blueprint or an instruction manual, packed with information that contributes to your physical traits, behaviors, intelligence, and even susceptibility to certain diseases. You've probably heard phrases like, "she has her mother's eyes," or "he gets his athleticism from his dad." These are examples of how our genes, passed down from our parents, can shape who we are. But there's more to the story. Our genes don't just determine our characteristics in a vacuum. Instead, they interact with our environment, creating a dynamic interplay that impacts our development and shapes our identity. Now, when we talk about environmental influences, we're referring to a broad spectrum of factors. This can mean the culture we grow up in, the languages we speak, the food we eat, and even the air we breathe. It can also include our family dynamics, the socioeconomic conditions we're raised in, and our individual experiences. Consider the game of poker. You're dealt a hand, that's your genetic makeup, but how you play that hand, that's influenced by your environment. You might have a pair of aces, but if you don't know the rules of the game, or if you're too timid to bet, you might not win. Similarly, a person might have a genetic predisposition for musical talent, but if they never have the chance to pick up an instrument, or if they grow up in an environment where music isn't valued, that potential might never be realized. So, while genes can lay out a potential path for us, it's our environment that often determines whether we follow that path or deviate from it. Our genes provide possibilities, but our environment shapes our realities. It's this fascinating interplay between our genetic code and our life experiences that makes us who we are, each of us a unique blend of nature and nurture. This brings us to the heart of the matter, the nature versus nurture debate. This long-standing controversy, stretching back over centuries of human thought, asks a fundamental question. Are we primarily shaped by our genetic inheritance, our nature, or by the environment in which we're raised, our nurture? Historically, this debate has seen passionate advocates on both sides. On one hand, the proponents of nature argued that our genetic code is the blueprint of our potential. Our intelligence, our temperament, our health predispositions, all written into the double helix of our DNA. They pointed to twins separated at birth who grew up to have uncannily similar lives as proof of their theory. On the other hand, champions of nurture contended that it is our environment, our experiences, and our learning that forge us. They cited cases of feral children who, despite their human DNA, behaved more like animals due to their upbringing in the wilderness. Yet, as our understanding of genetics and psychology has deepened, these polarized positions have begun to converge. It's become increasingly clear that the dichotomy of nature versus nurture is overly simplistic. Instead, researchers now agree that both our genes and our environment interact in complex ways to shape us. This shift towards a more nuanced understanding acknowledges that while our genes may set certain boundaries, our environment can significantly influence how, when, and even whether those genetic predispositions are expressed. Consider height, for instance. It's clearly influenced by genetics. Tall parents often have tall children. But nutrition during childhood can also dramatically affect a person's ultimate stature. In other words, the genes for height can only be fully expressed if the person receives adequate nutrition during their growth years. So, in the end, the nature versus nurture debate isn't about choosing one over the other. It's about understanding how these two forces work together, how they intersect and interact, to shape the complex mosaic of our behaviors, our health, our personalities, and ultimately, our lives. It's not a matter of choosing between nature and nurture, but understanding how these two forces interact to shape who we are. And this brings us to the concept of gene-environment interaction. What does this mean exactly? Well, it's a fascinating dance between our genetic makeup and the world around us. Our genes can influence how we respond to our environment, and in turn, our environment can impact how our genes behave. Let's dive into an example to make this clearer. Consider stress, a universal human experience. Everyone feels stress, but people respond to it differently. Some people are exceptionally resilient, while others might crumble under pressure. This isn't just about mental strength or personality. Your genes play a pivotal role too. Certain genes can make you more susceptible to the negative effects of stress. However, these genes don't act alone. They are activated or deactivated by environmental factors, like the amount and type of stress you're exposed to. Now let's take a look at another example: addiction. Some people have a genetic predisposition towards addiction. They carry genes that make them more likely to become addicted if they use substances. But here's the thing: these genes don't guarantee addiction. They simply increase the risk. If a person with these genes never comes into contact with addictive substances, they won't develop an addiction. The environment plays a critical role in turning the potential risk into a reality. These examples illustrate the intricate balance between our genes and our environment. It's not a one-way street. It's a constant back and forth, a dynamic interaction that shapes who we are and how we behave. Our genes set the stage, but our environment directs the play. In essence, we're not just products of our genes or our environment, we're products of the interactions between them. Our genetic makeup and our environmental experiences aren't isolated factors that independently shape us. They intertwine and influence each other, working together to create the unique individuals we are. In other words, our genes and our environment are constantly interacting, shaping and reshaping us throughout our lives. This constant interaction between our genes and our environment can even lead to changes at the genetic level, a field of study known as epigenetics. Epigenetics, in essence, is the study of changes in gene expression that do not involve alterations to the underlying DNA sequence. It is a complex field that delves into how our experiences, our environment, and even our choices can subtly alter the way our genes function. Imagine genes as an orchestra, each playing its own instrument. The music played by this orchestra, the melody of life, is not just determined by the instruments or the musicians, but also by the conductor, the epigenome, who decides when, where, and how loudly each instrument plays. Our experiences and the environment around us act as this conductor, influencing the performance of our genes. For instance, exposure to certain environmental factors like stress, diet, or toxins can switch genes on or off, altering our genetic performance without changing the score, the DNA sequence. This is where it gets fascinating. These epigenetic changes can sometimes be passed on from generation to generation. A classic example of this is the Dutch hunger winter of 1944 to 1945, where individuals exposed to famine in utero had specific epigenetic changes that they later passed on to their offspring. So, what does this mean for our understanding of development? It means that development is not a linear path dictated solely by our genes. Instead, it's a dynamic process shaped by the interplay of genes and environment. It's a beautiful dance, with genes and experiences twirling around and influencing each other. This understanding shifts the age-old debate from nature versus nurture to nature via nurture, underscoring the reality that our genes and our experiences are not separate influences on our development, but intertwined threads in the rich tapestry of life. So, while our genes may provide a blueprint, it's our experiences that determine how that blueprint is read and interpreted. So, to answer the question we started with, both the city-dwelling twin and the country-dwelling twin would be shaped by both their genes and their environments. We've delved into the fascinating world of genetic and environmental influences, exploring how both these elements play crucial roles in shaping us. Our genes, those tiny segments of DNA that carry the code to our individuality, are not the sole architects of our destiny. The environment, too, leaves an indelible mark on our development. In the age-old debate of nature versus nurture, it's clear now, more than ever, that it's not a case of one or the other. Instead, it's a complex interplay of both forces, working in concert to shape us. Our genes provide the blueprint, but the environment helps to construct the building that is us. We have also touched upon the intriguing realm of gene-environment interaction, where certain genetic predispositions can be amplified or muted by environmental factors. And let's not forget the fascinating field of epigenetics, where environment can actually alter the expression of our genes, further underscoring the intricate dance between our genes and our environments. So, the next time you wonder why you are the way you are, remember, it's not just nature or nurture, but a dance between the two that has shaped you into the unique individual you are today. Subscribe and don't forget to take care of yourselves. Goodbye.